All right, so today we're going to be diving into Viking Therapeutics.
Okay.
You might know them by their stock ticker VKTX.
Right.
And it's been kind of a wild ride recently.
Yeah.
Down over 40% in the last 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's enough to give anyone pause.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And the main source that we're going to be taking a look at today is an article from The Motley Fool.
Okay.
It's called "Has the Bubble Burst for Viking Therapeutics Stock?" And this was published fairly recently, February 6th, 2025.
Okay, so very recent.
Yeah, so hot off the presses.
Uh-huh.
And so basically what's interesting about this company is that their entire valuation is riding on this one weight loss drug
Right.
called VK2735.
VK2735.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
And it's still in development, but it's shown some really promising results in these early trials.
Yeah.
Like people losing almost 15% of their body weight in just 13 weeks.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, that kind of news gets investors excited.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Which is why we're seeing their market cap hovering around $3.5 billion.
Wow.
Even though they don't have any products actually bringing in any revenue right now.
Okay, so that's a pretty big gamble on the part of investors then, right?
Yeah, they're basically betting on this drug to be a huge success.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where things get really interesting here.
Okay.
So you've got all this early excitement, it kind of created this bubble around the company. And when those big acquisition offers that everyone was expecting,
Right.
they didn't materialize.
Yeah.
And then investors started to realize, getting this drug through the rest of the trials and actually out onto the market,
Right.
it could take a while. Well, that's when the stock really started to tumble.
Okay. So it sounds like there's a ton of risk involved.
Yeah.
But also the potential for a huge reward if this drug actually lives up to the hype.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
Okay, cool.
It's high risk, high reward. And to really try and figure out, which way it's going to go, I think we need to dig a little deeper into this.
For sure.
So let's talk about the whole GLP-1 drug landscape.
Okay.
You've probably heard of these medications. They were originally developed for type 2 diabetes, but now they're making waves for weight loss.
Yeah, that's a pretty hot area right now.
It is.
Yeah.
And for good reason. We're seeing these drugs help people achieve some pretty significant lasting weight loss.
Uh-huh.
And that's something we haven't really seen with other medications before.
Right.
Now, VK2735 falls right in this category.
Okay, so how does VK27325 stack up against the other GLP-1 drugs that are already out there?
Well, that's the exciting part.
Okay.
The early data suggests it could be even more effective.
Wow.
But we have to remember, this is all based on phase 2 trials,
Okay.
which are relatively small.
Right.
So to really know for sure, they need to conduct these larger, more rigorous phase 3 trials.
Okay, so can you walk me through what makes phase 3 so special?
Sure. So imagine phase 2 as like a sneak peek.
Okay.
Phase 3 is the full-blown movie premiere.
Gotcha.
They involve way more participants.
Right.
And they're designed to really confirm that the drug consistently delivers those same positive results on a much larger scale.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So these phase 3 trials are going to be pretty crucial for Viking Therapeutics then, huh?
I mean, they're make or break, really.
Wow.
The FDA won't even consider approving the drug without solid data from phase 3.
Right.
And that's not even considering the fact that, getting a drug approved is just the first hurdle.
Right.
Then they have to figure out how to actually manufacture it, market it.
Yeah.
All while competing with these big pharma companies that are already established in this GLP-1 market.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot.
It's a lot to consider.
Wow.
And we haven't even touched on their financials yet.
Right.
Remember, no products on the market means no revenue coming in.
Right.
So they're burning through cash to fund this research and development, and it's costing them a lot.
Yeah. So how do they keep the lights on if they're not making any money?
Well, that's where the Motley Fool article brings up some really interesting points.
Okay.
Their current cash on hand will only last so long, especially with these expensive phase 3 trials coming up.
Yeah.
So to stay afloat, they're likely going to need to raise more capital.
Okay.
And the most common way to do that is by issuing more shares of stock.
Hold on. Why is that a big deal? Why is issuing more stock something that we should be concerned about?
Think of it like this. You own a piece of a pie, right? If the company issues more shares, it's like they're slicing that pie into more pieces.
Right.
So each piece you own represents a smaller portion of the whole.
So even if the company does well, your individual investment might not grow as much because your ownership has been diluted.
Exactly. And the Motley Fool article actually points out that Viking's share count has been steadily increasing, which could be a red flag for potential investors.
Okay, so we've got this potentially amazing drug That's still unproven, a stock that's been really volatile, and a company that needs more cash to stay in the game.
Yeah.
So what's the bottom line here for someone considering investing in Viking Therapeutics right now?
Well, that's where you have to kind of weigh the potential rewards against the very real risks.
Right.
The Motley Fool articles suggest being cautious.
Okay.
They're saying that VKTX is still pretty risky at its current valuation of $3.5 billion.
Yeah.
And that its success is entirely dependent on how VK2735 performs in these upcoming trials.
So it's a bit of a gamble, but potentially a very lucrative one.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Okay, cool. But this raises a big question for me.
Okay.
Beyond just the financial side of things,
Yeah.
what are the potential, societal impacts of a drug like this?
Right.
Imagine a world where, people could easily achieve significant weight loss.
Yeah.
What would that mean for our culture's obsession with body image?
Right.
And the pressures to conform to these certain ideals?
That's a really important question.
Yeah.
And it's one that we'll definitely delve deeper into later on.
Okay, awesome.
But before we go there, I think it's crucial to understand the ins and outs of this GLP-1 market and how VK2735 fits into that whole puzzle.
We'll unpack all of that in part 2 of this deep dive.
Good.
So make sure you stick around. All right, so we just finished talking about some of the financial ups and downs of Viking Therapeutics, but let's shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
And talk more about this whole GLP-1 drug scene.
Okay, sure.
It seems like everyone's talking about them these days.
It's true. It's definitely a hot topic.
Yeah, you said that these drugs were originally for type 2 diabetes, but now they're showing all this promise for weight loss.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating how that all developed.
Yeah, how did that happen?
Well, basically, these drugs work by mimicking a hormone in your gut that helps regulate blood sugar and appetite. And so it turns out that same mechanism can also lead to significant weight loss.
Oh, wow. So it's like a side effect almost.
Yeah. You could kind of think of it that way.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it's been really revolutionary for a lot of people.
So where does VK2735 fit into all of this?
Right, yeah.
How does it stack up against the other GLP-1 drugs that are already out there?
Well, the existing landscape is pretty crowded. You've got big players like Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly. They're already having tons of success with their GLP-1 weight loss medications.
Gotcha.
But what makes VK2735 so interesting is that it has the potential to be even more effective than these drugs that are already out there.
Really?
Remember, we saw those early trials, almost 15% weight loss in just 13 weeks.
Yeah, those numbers are pretty impressive.
It's definitely eye-catching.
Yeah, for sure.
But, we also talked about how important those phase 3 trials are going to be.
Right. Can you walk me through what makes phase 3 different from those earlier trials?
Sure. So imagine phase 2 was like a test screening with a small audience.
Okay.
Phase 3 is like the grand opening. They're showing the film to a packed theater.
Gotcha. So it's going big.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're going to be enrolling hundreds, maybe even thousands of participants.
Wow.
At different locations all across the country.
Okay.
And they're really trying to see if VK2735 can consistently deliver those impressive weight loss results that we saw earlier.
Right.
But they're also going to be very carefully monitoring for any potential side effects.
So it's about making sure the drug is both safe and effective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They want to verify those early findings before it's released to the public.
Makes sense. So the FDA is going to be watching these trials really closely then.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Their approval hinges on the data that comes out of phase 3.
It's high stakes for Viking Therapeutics.
No doubt about it.
So let's say, hypothetically, that VK2735 passes these phase 3 trials with flying colors.
Okay.
And the FDA gives it the green light.
Mm-hmm.
They're still not out of the woods yet, right?
Right. Even then, Viking faces a whole other set of challenges.
Like what?
Well, they have to figure out how to actually get this drug into the hands of patients.
Oh, right. You mentioned something about manufacturing and marketing.
Yeah, so it's not just about the science. It's also about the business side of things.
Okay.
Viking would need to build a whole infrastructure to produce and distribute the drug.
Right.
Negotiate with insurance companies to get it covered.
Mm-hmm.
And then convince doctors to actually prescribe VK2735 over other options.
Right. So they've got to make sure that doctors are actually willing to prescribe this.
Yeah, it's a really complex and competitive landscape.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider those big pharmaceutical companies
Right.
that already have such a strong foothold in the GLP-1 market.
So it sounds like there's a really long road ahead for Viking Therapeutics.
It is.
Even if this drug turns out to be everything they hope it will be,
For sure.
this whole deep dive has really opened my eyes to just how much goes into bringing a new drug to market.
It's a pretty amazing process when you think about all the different pieces that have to come together.
Yeah, for sure.
And, it raises a lot of really interesting questions, especially when we start to consider the potential impact of a drug like VK2735 on society as a whole.
Yeah, you're right. We've talked about the science, the finances, the challenges.
Yeah.
But what about the bigger picture?
Right.
Like, what could a drug like this, with the potential to significantly impact weight loss, really mean for our culture, our relationship with our bodies?
That's a big one.
It's a lot to think about.
It really is, and that's exactly what we're going to explore in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, awesome. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, we're going to be examining those big picture questions.
Okay.
And really diving into the potential societal implications of a drug like VK2735.
All right, so we've talked about the science behind VK2735,
right?
The financial ups and downs of Viking Therapeutics,
yeah.
and all the hurdles that they're going to face getting this drug to market.
Exactly.
But now I want to kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture.
Sure.
You mentioned earlier that a drug like this could have these significant societal implications. What did you mean by that?
Well, think about it. Our culture has this pretty complicated relationship with weight and body image.
Right.
We're constantly bombarded with all these messages about what's considered ideal or healthy.
Yeah, for sure.
And those messages often come with a lot of baggage.
It feels like there's this constant pressure to conform to these often unrealistic and unattainable beauty standards.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not just about how we look either. It's like tied to judgments about willpower, self-discipline, even like worthiness.
It's all connected.
Yeah, so imagine a drug that could like potentially disrupt all those deeply ingrained beliefs.
Right. It really challenges the idea that weight is solely a reflection of personal choices.
Right.
And it kind of highlights those biological factors that are also at play.
So it could be like a total game changer.
Or it could be a paradigm shift.
Yeah, in how we view weight and health. But couldn't it also backfire?
That's a good question.
Could a drug like VK2735, even with the best intentions, end up reinforcing those harmful beauty standards that we were just talking about?
It's possible. I mean, if it's marketed as like a quick fix or a way to achieve that, elusive ideal body,
right,
it could definitely fuel those anxieties and pressures.
Yeah.
We might see people rushing to get their hands on this drug, not necessarily for health reasons,
right,
but just to try and fit into a certain mold or, gain that societal acceptance.
It's like a sci-fi movie. Yeah. Everyone's striving for this like manufactured standard of perfection.
Right, exactly.
It makes me wonder what would happen to the people who choose not to take the drug.
Yeah.
Would they face even more stigma or pressure to conform?
That's a really important question, and it highlights the importance of responsible marketing, public education.
Right.
We need to be having honest conversations about the limitations of this drug, the potential downsides.
For sure.
And we can't lose sight of the fact that this isn't a magic bullet. It doesn't address those underlying societal factors that are contributing to these body image issues in the first place.
On a more hopeful note.
Yeah.
Could VK2735 also help to destigmatize obesity?
I think so.
Could it help people to view it more as a medical condition rather than a personal failing?
I think that's definitely a possibility. If it's framed within a healthcare context and used responsibly, it could help shift that whole conversation away from blame and shame and toward a more empathetic and scientific understanding of weight and health.
It's about recognizing that obesity is this really complex issue with so many different factors at play.
Absolutely.
Biological, genetic, environmental, even socioeconomic.
Yeah.
It's not just about willpower or making better choices.
It's much more nuanced than that.
Yeah. So a drug like VK2735, used ethically and responsibly, could be a really powerful tool in helping us move towards a more holistic and compassionate approach to weight and health.
I think so, too.
It's pretty amazing to think about how this one drug could potentially have such a ripple effect on our culture and our understanding of ourselves.
It really highlights the fact that scientific advancements don't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
They're always intertwined with our cultural values, our beliefs, our understanding of the world around us.
Well, this has been quite a journey.
Yeah. It has.
We uncovered the potential of VK2735, explored the complexities of the GLP-1 market.
For sure.
And even dove into some really thought-provoking questions about society and our relationship with our bodies.
A lot to consider.
And it's important to remember that this is just the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
The upcoming phase 3 trials will be crucial for Viking Therapeutics.
Absolutely.
And even if the drug gets approved, there are still so many challenges and considerations ahead.
There's still a long road ahead.
It's a good reminder that scientific progress is rarely a straight line.
Right.
There are always twists and turns, setbacks, breakthroughs.
It's a process.
And it's up to us as informed citizens to engage with these developments thoughtfully and critically.
Absolutely.
We need to ask those tough questions and demand responsible innovation.
I completely agree.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Viking Therapeutics and their potential game-changing drug, we hope you walk away with a sense of curiosity and a desire to stay informed.
For sure.
The future of healthcare and our relationship with our bodies is being shaped right now.
Absolutely.
And it's a conversation worth having.
It really is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Viking Therapeutics.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration of the world around us.